Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. We're your hosts, Debbie
and Juliana. Welcome to today's episode of Zone to Speak podcast. We have a very special guest with us today, Mikel Delagrange, one of the driving forces behind Team Amani. If you're not familiar with Team Amani, they are a groundbreaking cycling team that's making waves in the sport by providing opportunities and support for East African cyclists to compete on the global stage. Mikel has been instrumental in building this team and fostering talent in a region that's often overlooked in the cycling world. His work is not just about winning races, but about creating a platform for these incredible athletes to showcase their abilities and to change the narrative around African cycling. We're excited to dive into his journey, the mission of Team Amani, and the future of cycling in East Africa. Welcome to the show, Mikel.
Not everybody's going to get to see that beautiful Swahili coast that
That's okay.
Mikel is on.
Yeah. They'll have to just come and see it for themselves, of course.
Yeah.
I would love to. When I went there for migration, I wish I had the time. It does look so beautiful. It's on my list to go back. I really would like to go back. I was hoping to go back for the Evolution race in Tanzania, which is part of our conversation. I want to know what's happening with that one.
Yeah, well, lots of
Is it ever coming
things
back?
to say. I mean, it's who knows, what the future may hold, but I think for us it was like a bridge too far. Having the safari race, and then the migration, and then evolution in Tanzania was a long way, like 3 different races back to back to back.
Yeah.
And me and James were completely spent at the end of it. So I just thought this wasn't really bringing joy. It was just like, yeah. So, and I thought we did this because we think it's a great thing to be part of, and to try and do something meaningful. But at the same time, it brings a lot of joy, and that's the only way it's going to be sustainable. And so we have to be kind of disciplined, I think, on looking at those things and saying, like, can we keep doing this year in year out? Otherwise we shouldn't even start.
I agree. There has to be some sort of a balance that works for everybody together, because it's a big production to do this. You want to keep promoting these athletes and exposing everything, and not to mention the fact that you're a human rights attorney. So are you actually practicing again now, or are you still on that sabbatical working on the Amani project?
I never went on sabbatical, to be honest.
I thought you did.
So I stopped working at the ICC, the criminal courts, but then I went straight to the UN, working in Palestine. Then now I'm working on Sudan. So, yeah, I mean, part of it is there's like a yin and yang aspect to it, to have that work, and then this one, where one of them is really kind of at the macro level, and dealing with abstract concepts like bringing justice to a society over the course of decades potentially, to something that's a lot more tangible and a lot more real, like in the sense that, like, we have 8 athletes, and from Team Amani, and another 10 from the Black Mambas, and like these opportunities and that we put before these athletes dramatically changes the trajectory of their lives, and that's something you can see and gauge, and it's real. For me, it's really nice to have finally something that I can actually see and feel in terms of progress. We've been getting our asses kicked out there in the international justice arena, so yeah, I needed some wins.
Super known globally now and touching and inspiring so many people. How did it all start? Was it from your job, that with your time in Africa, that the passion came to create this team?
I mean, to be honest, I never thought that I would find myself in this situation. It wasn't part of a kind of preordained plan. In fact, quite the opposite. I have quite a healthy skepticism about international development based on the work I've done. I've seen like the dark underbelly of it, and in fact, secretly I'm spending my professional career working with fantastic lawyers from all over the region to try and undermine that system, because I think it's well past its due date, and in
Yeah.
fact is uh, prohibiting growth because it takes space. With all the best intentions in the world, of course, like everyone thinks that, by giving their money and doing all these things, they have the best intentions, so the results must be good. But that's just not the case, and the data shows that. So anyway, for me to have a project in East Africa is the most blaring hypocrisy. But in my own defense, I would say that yeah, I was working for now almost 15 years in the region, um, and I am a cyclist myself, and I came to know the athletes just by riding with them and befriending them, and just hearing the stories over and over again about the challenges that they were facing to break out into the world tour, and yeah, one athlete in particular had a dream to be a professional cyclist, was very articulate about the hurdles, and had some ideas about how to overcome them. And his name was Sule Kangangi, and I just resolved to kind of get in the back seat and let him drive and see where this thing went. And I wasn't uh, so the ideas, they came from the problems that were identified by him. And then we were just like, well, this is what other people have tried. Why don't we try this to address this problem? And every single thing kind of started that way. Like, here's a problem. These are our potential solutions that fit with our kind of, socio-cultural milieu that we're operating in. So yeah, that's how I found myself here. The goals in the beginning were super modest. Like, I thought, I had this bikes and coffee shop in The Hague, and we were just trying to leverage my relationship with the Dutch Cycling Federation, because they used to come in and have coffee, like, to try and get some athletes some experience, in Holland, and that was it. And then it just kind of like metastasized into whatever it is today.
It's, in a way, you build something to have a meeting ground of sorts to expose, and it becomes something more to build upon.
And
I guess that's the coolest part. It's a coalition, right?
Is.
And so it's got all
It
these
is.
like forces who, like, every day just materialize from the internet or from wherever they come, and they say, well, these are my skills and this is what I have to offer, and have you thought about this? And we're like, oh, great idea, let's try.
I agree, but with Sule, it was internal too, because he was living it and breathing it. I mean, what an amazing soul this man was, and he's going to live on forever. And all of these riders, just they live and breathe, that you can tell what he started and his hard work. It's he learned from his family's work ethic and testing different products and learning what they could do, what we could implement, and then obviously partnering with people like you. And you already have that, obviously, from working with people and trying to make change and knowing that it takes a lot. You can have all the best intentions, like you said. It doesn't always make a difference. But having both personalities to be able to meld off of and see, okay, where can we even start at? What do you think can work? Because sometimes someone thinks, oh, if I just throw enough money at something, we can make something happen. That's not necessarily true. Obviously, you've seen this. But what I'm trying to get at is there was something special about Sule and what he brought into the picture, what he started. But it did need more of a voice, more action, that bringing the migration, you founding the migration race and bringing that, to the people all around the world, having people come and join together. That's made a huge impact. That's already opened so many doors, and then getting more sponsors to provide training, provide gear, provide all the necessities for them to learn some basic skills more, and obviously, become better athletes overall. And then that just offers more exposure, like you've said. So they have the opportunity to work with these incredible cyclists around the world as well. I could see in Ian Boswell, people that have been really moved by these riders, by these racers. I was moved. I'm just watching videos and watching Migration Race 2022, 2023. I was in tears. I mean, I just thought it was absolutely incredible. I wish I could do more. You see people moved, you see things happening. What else do you see in the future now?
And it's really nice of you to say, and it's actually really important, I think, for us to hear, because like I think we have a tendency to just see uh, how much further we need to go. You get fixated on that, and then to have people say like, "Well, we think what you've done so far is not me personally, but the project." Um, recognizing some of the gains. So we never really reflect on these things. So it's interesting to hear and very nice to hear. But yeah, look, the coalition is so important for everything that we do. It's just like new and fresh energy, new and fresh ideas. Um, and yeah, like I have this story. I was in I was in Darfur, Sudan. I got caught in the last coup in 2022. Um, and then I got stuck there for a while. I was with with the affected community for a while until they finally managed to get me out. But then right after I got out, I bizarrely had a speaking engagement at Rouleur in London,
Oh, wow.
Rouleur Live, and it was a real, forgive me for saying, mind fuck, to go from these two extremes. But I tell the story because I remember I was sitting on this panel, and somebody was saying, "Well, what you're proposing, it seems like an impossible challenge." And I just thought, "Are you kidding?" And I said
Mhm.
this. I was like, um, "I've dealt with and I deal with on a daily basis, intractable problems, but allowing other people to participate in the sport that we love, if that's an intractable problem, we as a human race are in serious shit."
Serious, yeah, trouble.
I
Completely.
just looked around the room and I was like, seriously, like the people in this room can agree right now to solve this problem. Right now, we could just solve it. You know,
Exactly.
there are enough resources in this room. This is a small space. Cycling is so small, a small community. And if we can't get it right here, then what can we do at the macro level? And so I think that's the kind of message we're trying to communicate to the cycling industry, who, by the way, honestly have responded in an amazing way. And at first, I think there was like, well, are they just going to do it for a marketing cycle and tell the story and move on to like pink elephants?
Right.
But they, to their credit, a lot of great companies, like PAC, Physique, SRAM, Factor, Rafa, like these guys, I mean, they've made big investments and they stay with us to really see this thing through, because I think, from two levels, right? From a fan perspective, you're like, well, I don't want to hear any more stories about Fausto Coppi. Like I get it. Like, cycling has got this storied history. It is beautiful,
Of
but
course.
like these stories on repeat, I mean, they get stale. Why can't we have like the rest of the world play, so it's not just a European championship? And then, there are so many more narratives, so many more heroes to explore and to exploit. So many, and from just a kind of steely-eyed capitalist perspective, I mean, how could any corporation be satisfied with just having one single region play this game?
I agree. There's
It just
development
doesn't make
everywhere.
sense.
And we need to let that
Yeah,
development grow. We have to
yeah.
cultivate it.
That's the message we give to the coalition. We're like, look, everyone has an interest in this. I don't even care if you have a personal interest or you even care about East Africa. That's not the point. The point is that there are barriers to entry to this game. And as long as there are, then you can't tell me that we are, seeing the height of human performance with Pogacar's climbs or anything else, because only Europeans are playing.
Yeah.
And we've made this mistake before. We did it in running, where people were like, "Oh, wow, this mile record is the pinnacle of human achievement." And
Yes.
of course, that's what a high schooler does now. particularly a high schooler in Iten, Kenya. So yeah, I think that's the message that we're trying to get out there to not only the cycling industry but also just regular people. Like we all have a stake in this, and let's see like how exciting and interesting this sport would be if everyone has access to it.
I agree. If we can all be in the mix there.
There's been some changes, right? I think, I don't know if you would agree, but I don't know. I'm hoping this is impacting positively. I think it's 2025. They're going to have the World in Rwanda. So I think there's more exposure to African riders. What do you think?
I was cynical about it before, forgive me. Mainly because I've spoken to the people whose responsibility it is to extend the franchise of this game to non traditional cycling locations, and the plans that they had in place were so focused on individuals instead of structurally trying to enable a population to be able to get into this, so that you can then build a pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid are the best athletes, right? You see investments, and I'm talking serious investments, millions of dollars being spent to just ensure that a single rider finishes the race so nobody loses face. And that's not serious for me. What I thought, or what I still think, though, I think Binny has changed the game a little bit, but I think the original plan was like, hey, we put this event on, and then we can kind of wash our hands with the region, because like we've done something, we move on. But to his credit, Bini Gamai has kind of made that more difficult because he's a 1 in a billion talent, but at the same time, he shows that with resources, with opportunities, there are athletes who can really compete at the highest levels.
Yes, and succeed.
Yeah.
Happy to see his performance at Le Tour. And you're absolutely right. Hopefully, it will show the right people that there is real talent there. And it's a shame that there's no real investment on the bottom of the pyramid, as you said, that would make some impactful changes having this World Cup.
I mean, like in the end of the day, I'm just like, I think the view is we can't wait around for the traditional powers that be to go out and extend the franchise. They've already demonstrated they have no interest in doing so. So we just go and do it ourselves.
So this was why migration was built upon. This was part of what this was built upon, is bringing everyone to their home, to the riders' homelands, and bringing everybody to Africa.
But it's not just, but again, we are just one example, and we don't want to be the last, right? Like the point is to have marquee, internationally recognized races outside of Europe. It has to be the case, right? Like, you have to be able to focus on races that are close to you, that are accessible to you, this terrain is familiar to you, so that you can have some of those competitive advantages for the first time, And and so hopefully, it sparks something like that's why I love the Gravel Earth series,
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, but it's super important, like I mean, even in the base is in Spain, but really promoting races in non-traditional places, and then helping them kind of profile themselves, so that the people from those areas have meaningful competition that is accessible to them.
Yeah, the Gravel Earth series, for example, has the migration race in Kenya, also has a cross-Andean in Chile. I don't know anything else that it's not in Europe that is part of that, but I think it is great exposure, and especially in Africa. And I'm Brazilian, so there are a few great races there as well, not part of the Gravel series, but I think something that also needs to be communicated is safety, especially for women. When a lot of women come to me and ask, oh, you've been to the migration, how is it? Or, oh, I want to go to South America, how is it? Because there's also a little bit of fear. People think they're going to get robbed, their bikes are going to be stolen, or something can happen to them. So I think that's another barrier for us to break on people going to those locations, not just the cycling on those locations to grow and be able to be international spots for competition.
I think it's perfectly reasonable. If I was somebody who had never traveled to Africa and I only watched how it was portrayed in the media, I would be afraid as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Tell us about the training there. I know you guys got the pump track. It looks really cool. I saw
Yeah, it
some
looks
of the
incredible.
movies. Now you have, I guess, the house. Do the riders live on the house together and they are training? Tell us a little bit how it's community
so
there.
we shot this commercial for Facebook like 2 years ago, and then we managed to negotiate that if they're going to use our likeness to sell the metaverse, then they'll make a kind of generational investment in what we're doing. And so they gave us the money. We used the money to buy this piece of land in Iten, which is known as the home of champions. It's where like all the long distance runners come from. It's really an interesting place. It's right on the lip of the Rift Valley, and it's at 2,400 meters. And then right from where we stand and right where A10 is, it like just drops down, like 30 kilometers. And so it's got a microclimate, and it's got, more importantly, it has a culture of excellence. Like you can feel it. Like everyone there expects to be, the best in the world. They have a swagger about them, you know. They know that whoever is the best here is potentially the best in the world. And there's like thousands of people running any given day, like all these Europeans who are following them, like they're like like their personal Jesuses, like eating what they eat and sleeping where they sleep and trying to fucking figure out what's really happening here. And for us, we just wanted to tap into that because there's so much that suggests in cycling that they don't belong,
Yeah.
which there would have been in running at one stage. We wanted them to kind of like mainline into this confidence and to show that like, hey, these guys have transcended sport here, and you can do the same. Let's get that swagger going, let's get that confidence going, so that when we start up at the start line, we don't already lose because we're afraid or we think we don't belong. you know um, and then from like a training perspective, I think all the things that lend themselves to the athletics guys dominating, I think also assist the cyclists. And we think there's great potential not only for our team to be training there, but like to invite athletes from all over the world to come, just like they do for running,
Yeah.
come and have this cycling experience because the terrain is amazing. We have a climb that's even longer than T-Day, and the same or maybe more altitude gain and lost. But it's way more interesting because you're not just sitting on the top of a mountain by yourself.
Oh,
So yeah, we really want to build that space out. So we have big plans to to create lodging for guests, and
yes, I
and then
saw
this is
that.
also like a business model for the guys who are phasing out of our project, so that they have things to do
Mm,
when they're no longer pursuing their professional careers. So yeah, we have lots of plans.
I
Every day
love
a
the
new one.
infrastructure behind it all, and
Mm.
also just having the lodging for guests to come experience this, to see what this is all about. Because there is really a feeling that you get from that. Even just looking at the location on camera, there's something special about it, and I love that it can spread onto more potential jobs and education throughout everything for everybody, from guests coming there, the riders learning from everyone. So we all learn from each other so much. That's part of all of
Yeah,
this.
we had some of the biggest pros come before the migration and safari this year. Yeah, so we had Hans Becking, we had Lawrence Nason, we had Lucas Baum. These guys have like competed and won in Cape Epics and raced in the World
yeah.
Tour. They came and did a training camp with our guys before migration and safari. Um, yeah, and it was great because they just absolutely loved it, and they got the benefit from it because they were crushing migration afterwards. So I think the word is getting out that it's a great place to train, and it's also interesting, which is good for morale.
Yeah.
But beyond that, look, I mean, the thing is that we're trying to like, it's a holistic approach. Like to really get cycling off the ground, you have to think about the four corners of like the entire ecosystem. And we're talking about racing is, of course, like in developing top-notch athletes are the top of the pyramid, but you need a big amateur base to feed into that to that pyramid, and then from that amateur base there has to be consumerism, right? Because then that's why corporations want to come and stay. They want to make investments in the sport. All of those things have to be there, right? And then you have these kind of like adjacent careers that people open bike shops, they become mechanics, they start tours, they do all of these things, and all of this we're building from the ground up. But like the race that I'm at right now, the Safari Race Series, we have a 4-race series that's sponsored by a big Kenyan corporate, and the whole point is it's Kenyan facing. We're trying to get thousands of Kenyans on their bikes, just exploring and experiencing their own country in ways they never thought possible, uh, away from the busy traffic, away from the dangers of, congestion, and just like, enjoying themselves and enjoying that kind of cool gravel vibe, like bringing it here, and with the hopes of building that base, right?
Yep.
And with that base, people start buying bikes, they're buying kit. It makes it easier for us to convince our corporate partners that they also have an economic interest in this, emerging economy.
True.
And then that the pyramid starts to get sharper. So
yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
you're really a
all part of the plan.
visionary. You have this macro vision looking into all these different facets of the industry, of how to build a team, how to keep them encouraged, how to bring the attention to Africa, but also, what's in it for the industry, for the country, for the partners. So I think
Well, like I said,
what
Juliana, it's like it's not just me though. I have to stop you there. Like we have a great team of people who we put our brains together and we're thinking about these things all the time. And
amazing.
because when you have great people on your team, and particularly great East Africans on your team, like it's personal.
Very.
It's not just like charity work of me who's like flying by, but like this is their country, this is
It's
their livelihood,
impacting their
this is
life.
they have a personal interest, and then so you have to think everything through. Otherwise, they're wasting time.
I
Yeah, and I
agree.
think
And no
that,
one on my team.
sorry, no,
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
culture, I could be wrong. I don't have, the exposure you have there, but I feel from the outside that the culture has always been about more of running, running, running. And hopefully now the mentality is also changing, that cycling is also an opportunity for women, because you mentioned also that it's not as easy to recruit women for the team.
It's just a matter of like, in my view, a matter of time when we get, running also was not, it didn't just happen overnight, right? It really ballooned when they got success, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same way that, for example, in the United States, like no one cared about cycling until Lance started winning.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everyone is the same. Like in Britain, like no one cared about cycling until Wigo started winning. Like, I mean, I'm exaggerating. People cared, but it wasn't a national phenomenon. And
This is a big
yeah,
this is a big platform for him. It's some recognition here, and I'm glad he's using that too as well to take advantage, because in this day and age, no offense, we have to take advantage of the time that we're given and make something out of it, but also do something more or less like what you are doing with the African riders. And I want to hear about who everybody in this team is too. It's nice that you're a face behind this recognition. That feels good, but I understand exactly how that feels when it takes a lot more than just one person to do all this. It takes a village, and it really does have to work within that village. Everybody has to work together. But right now, Binyam Girmay is a catapult right now. And do you see something happening there? Because he's more related with road racing, correct? Than the gravel scene.
Binny. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For us, like the distinctions between road and gravel, and even to a certain extent mountain biking, I
Mhm.
think some of them are a bit superficial, to be honest. Because like, if you can ride a bike at the highest levels in any of the disciplines, you can basically kind of. I mean, we're seeing this. Like Lucas Baum, he's a world class mountain biker. He just won the European Championships. After he finished migration, he went and tried to win the German national road championships. You know, like if you got an engine, you can just ride bikes.
Yep. It's true.
You know,
It's
and
true.
like and I think honestly, like it's because of the way that road cycling is in particular that they try to erect these barriers between the disciplines. But hopefully we can at least play a small role and start to knock some of those down.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
hope so too. And I think now I see it more this year. There's more of pros going in different disciplines. I mean, you can even tell the big star, Matthew Van Der Poel, you know, coming from cyclocross, doing the world tours now, Pidcock. And a lot of the world tours are going to gravel off season.
A big name is
Well, I mean,
Lachlan
look,
Morton, actually, too. He had a
yeah,
lot of
indeed.
exposure in
He's
doing
very
things that are
close to
kind of
the team.
not the usual norm, and following a different path and paving a way. And I think that's very important too.
It's just interesting, right? You know,
It
it's
is.
again, it's going back to what we were saying in the beginning. Like, if we just followed that kind of static script, we kind of already know how these things are going to play out. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
the Tour de France is a battle between two people, even though there's 180 in the race. You know, like, ugh. and and then they're like, it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a generational battle, because like if you get, you know, guys like Pogacar and Vingegaard, you know, they're going to be around for the next, you know, 5 to 10 years, just duking it out. So like we kind of already know what's going to happen. You know who the protagonists will be. And so to have, you know, someone like Locke come in and show us a different way to ride our bikes, you know, to have
Yep.
Lael ride around the world like she's doing now, like
Yes.
these are, you know, the stories, and again, these are, you know, these are stories from people who were inside and are coming out and doing their own thing. But imagine there's so many other stories to tell, and the bike is such an amazing piece of engineering. You know, it's simple yet dynamic, and the experiences that we can have. There's so many stories. You know, so let's
Yeah.
not be afraid to tell them. You know,
I agree. It's a
explore them.
big facilitator, so we got to use it. Yeah,
Mm.
it's incredible. You said that you cycle a lot. Do you actually take place in the migration races? Do you do these events, or you're too busy with that?
Yeah, it's ironic that like I'm riding my bike less now with all of this like support that we have from partners and all these things. But yeah, no, I don't race in the migrate. I did the recon in the beginning, so I know exactly what it takes to do it, because I did it with 4 guys, Sule included.
Wow.
Without all the support that they had, in fact, there was more climbing back then. But so yeah, and because having done it now, I want to you know, inflict that suffering on everyone else. So it's a bit of a sadistic interest.
It's fun. It's like, I know how challenging this can be. Let's see.
Indeed, yeah.
Put them to the test. We kind of spent a little bit of time on women, as far as women in cycling, and I bring it up because for me here in Miami, I've seen cycling grow so much as far as for women. I see tons of women out there, and just from that, you see hope. You just gain from that. If this can happen, it can get even bigger. And if this is happening here, this must be happening everywhere. But I know, like you said, in Africa, it's still slow moving as far as getting women into the sport. What do you think could make a difference there? Do you think there's a way to reach women on a different level?
Yeah, I'm always like loath to generalize. I think women in cycling, there's so much further to go. It's
I
true.
agree.
There have been some positive gains recently, um, but still, like with respect to pay equity, with respect to, you know, visibility, I think we're still just miles off the mark. And then until, you know, we get that sorted from in the professional ranks, it's very difficult to make the case when you're trying to, you know, tell some family that their daughter should pursue cycling, and they're like, but pursue it to what end?
Hmm.
You know, all the ladies in the world tour have to have a day job, and these are Europeans.
I
You
know
know,
this is crazy.
uh,
It's a different narrative than the men.
it's completely different.
Hmm.
Yeah, completely different, because at least with the men, you can say, well, if they transcended the sport, they'd be millionaires. And that's not something you can currently say about women, which is obviously a shame. It's shameful. So, but that being said, there are some challenges that I think. I mean, I don't think it's an African thing necessarily, but it is pronounced here as well. In Kenya, for example, there. But again, I would argue the same thing probably happens in Alabama,
Correct.
Yeah,
or
true.
potentially in Spain or Italy. Like, you're an athlete, and you're competing while you're in school, but then as soon as you finish school, you're expected to either get married, or if you get married, you have children, and then if you have children, certainly the man's not going to look after them, so you better quit your career to do so. Like, so that puts the shelf life of an athlete, female athlete, the time frame that they're operating in. I mean, cycling is already narrow, and
It
now we're
is.
talking about, like, well, you have from, when you're discovered around 16, perhaps even 15 or 16, until what, you're 23, and then it's time for you to go and start a family. So that that I think is something in general that holds women back. It is a problem that we're facing here, but again, I think we're one champion away from pushing back on that narrative. And we have an athlete right now, whose name is Zaverine Merere from Rwanda, and she's currently 21 years old, and she has been like the under 21 national champion of Rwanda. She in this gravel space, just every year just keeps getting better, and she's alone in our team at the moment. And all the women in the Mambas, I can tell you, just look up to her, because she's just a warrior. Like, she goes out and men are asking her, like, where her husband is, and like, why is she riding with the boys and all that. She doesn't give a shit.
I love it.
She just pushes
Amazing.
through it. She keeps riding. She travels to Europe with 7 guys. Doesn't give a shit if people are snarking or making whatever. She's just going out and doing it. And she's showing these women that, like, to make it in this world, you got to have sharp elbows, and
You
you
do.
got to have thick
Mentally
skin.
tough.
Which is bullshit, by the way. But
Agree.
it is how it is at the moment,
It is the
and I can't
reality,
think of a.
and you have to find these strong women like Zavirine that will fight against the current and really want this and not care, which is not easy. It's a different society. It's hard here in Europe or in the US, and I've been to Africa, and I've been talking to, girls like Zavirine and Violet, also from Rwanda, and it's not as easy to break the barrier.
No, it's not easy, but I mean, again, these two that you mentioned, Zav and Violette, also, they're not looking for easy. They're not looking for
Mm-hmm.
handouts, and they'll just do it one way or the other because that's who they are. And it just takes one or two, right? And then the other ladies are seeing that, oh
Yeah.
wow, they're doing it. Let me join them. We have a lot of work to do, and it's not easy, but at the same time, it's not impossible. It's not intractable.
No, completely not.
This is
It
not an
it takes a
intractable
great
problem.
example and somebody has the ability.
What is one of your super memorable moment from Team Amani and this entire experience?
Yeah, there's been so many. I think some of the highlights. Yeah, there was John Kariuki, who was racing in Unbound. Yeah, I guess it was 2 years ago now. Or was it not this Unbound, but
I
the
think it
Unbound
was last
before?
year.
Yeah, last year. He makes the selection, right? Of and he's in this like group for 150 miles, and everyone is asking, who in the hell is that
Is
black
that
guy and what is he doing there? You know, and that was amazing. And John is another one of these guys who just like didn't get intimidated, wasn't afraid, and just thought, like, if these guys can do it, I can do it. And that was really important, I think, for everyone to see that this isn't just like some box ticking inclusivity campaign. We're not just showing up because we want to be the first black people to race in whatever race. We don't care about that. We came to compete, and we came to undermine stereotypes. And John did a great job there. He also won a couple of other races in the States. Zavarine this year, stage one of migration, winning that stage and dropping Sarah Sturm in the process. That was really encouraging. She wasn't sure how she was going to fare against these top athletes, and Sarah in particular. And to and hit first and strike first in a stage that she's traditionally struggled in was really cool to see. So again, just feeling like we're building off of every year and making progress. That's what we need, until we get that kind of marquee.
Yeah, I actually saw that win was in I think in your latest movie, and Sarah went up to her and was like, "Oh my God, you're so strong," and it was such a beautiful moment that you guys shared with all of us in the movie. Amazing, loved it.
It was pretty cool. I was pretty excited, I have to say.
I bet. It's amazing when you get
Yeah.
to see these athletes surprise themselves in such a way too, and to see their own strength, winning out. It's amazing to see that and know that they've worked so hard for this.
That in your email signature, you say that you are, Team Amani director, but also biggest cheerleader. But I think you have also another cheerleader, which is Lachlan Morton. Tell us a little bit about that relationship.
If you don't know him, and you just follow him social media or in the media in general, you're almost afraid of meeting him, right? Because you think he's such an important person in the space. What happens if he's like an asshole? I'm always afraid of meeting these people who are loom large in my life.
And it shatters your
shit.
image.
Right.
Because I want him to in person to live up to the.
Of
And
course.
yeah, well, I can tell all of your listeners that rest assured, in person he's even more impressive. He's just one of these human beings who just has an instinct for doing the right thing all the time, and he gives himself in ways that it's just shocking for an athlete in the prime of his career, in the prime of his marketability, to be spending the time he spends with us and our project. It's crazy, and if anyone actually knew how much time he spent on it, they would be shocked. He's emotionally and intellectually invested. He's really helping us on the coaching side. He invests his time to coming out at least once a year to come out now with the training camps and stuff. So, and then organized it himself. He did all of the groundwork. He's the one putting the cones down and setting drills up. He's the guy. He's the real deal, and I can't frankly say enough about him. It's just an impressive human being.
I think because obviously there's the people, not just Team Amani, but also the Maasai, and it's so untouched, untapped, and so magical for you to be in their environment and their culture and the animals' habitats. But beyond that, there's also because it's a stage race, you get to have breakfast and dinner with everyone. So the closeness that you get from people and get to know mind-like people, but also some of your heroes. I mean, I'm sitting down having breakfast with Lyle morning, pinch me, and then you bump into someone and you say, "Excuse me," and it's Lachlan. Or Sule was there, it was so great to meet him as well. And I mean, I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah, well,
It's
Lachlan
truly an
personally is
incredible place.
a hero for me. I named my youngest son after him.
And that's been I'm really surprised by that, to be honest, how many athletes the experience has really resonated with, and who just continue to kind of go out of their way to open doors for us, to create opportunities for the athletes. It's just really remarkable. I mean, there's guys like you mentioned, Ian Boswell, who's a huge supporter. There's others who are riding, like Carlos Verona, who rides for Trek Little, the Lucas Bombs of the world. All these guys who just kind of come, and Mattia DeMarchi doing it's just really amazing, and yeah, and ladies like Sarah Sturm, like Leo, all these guys who kind of lend their influence to coming and doing something that's a bit non-traditional, and then telling the world about it from their perspective, has really moved the dial for us. So yeah, just it's really been encouraging. I mean, I didn't expect that, to be honest. been around serious professional athletes. I mean, I also grew up in Miami, and like even just the people training for triathlon,
Yeah.
and we weren't thinking about anything but ourselves.
No. You're training 3
and then
days.
so to have athletes at that level who are at the top of their sport, who then still have the bandwidth to kind of think about how they can keep the door open for others, I think is a remarkable character trait. Really,
really is. I love being able to see that too, that side of an athlete. We don't get to see certain sides of athletes in general.
Yeah.
We don't get to see what moves them in certain ways and what keeps them going, because there's a motivation behind everything. It's what feeds your soul. Basics of getting on a bike, like Matthias started with enough. It's like you started with this project. It's just getting people on bikes. It can't be so inclusive to European cyclists. We have to spread that word constantly. Watch what the Amani project is about. Go onto the website, subscribe, buy a jersey, do anything small for the project. Come out to the migration race. I mean, just ride your bike more. I get infected by it.
Well said, Debbie. I think that there is a communal aspect, especially to gravel cycling, which is really, I think, why it resonates with so many people.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us who are kind of really in the depths and the throes of road cycling at some point come up for air wondering what the hell we did with the last 10 years of our lives. Like, was it really worth it to be like, the best of your friend group up Alpe d'Huez? Like, is that really, is that what you want on your gravestone? And yeah, I think, with gravel cycling, but also with the onset of when Rafa came and first started doing their Continental Films series and showing like what else you could do with the bike, these adventures that could be had, and then Locke and his brother go out and do thereabouts, and like it just really kind of blew everyone's mind. Like, hey, wait, we don't just have to be staring at our stems all day. Like, we can go out and do other things with this instrument. And in so doing, we can also make friends, and we can also like have adventures, and potentially even find our way into like creating opportunities for other people. And it's just like, yeah, I think that's just something that any cyclist who's been riding their bike for more than a couple of years is looking for something else.
I agree.
Surely you have to be,
I know it's a
otherwise
meaning.
it's so dull.
It
Yeah.
is.
Curiosity. When you said you grew up in Miami, two things come to mind. One is I was one of those triathletes, and it's such a different community, right? And when I started doing graveling and ultra cycling, I mean, I love triathlon. It was a great phase of my life, but it's so much more competitive. Where in the gravel community, the sheetest of bikes, you get the biggest of praise. You're racing with that. Wow. It's just a different community, It was crazy for me doing the switch and seeing how people help each other as well, even if you're racing. There are a lot of times that even someone on the front is stopping to help someone else because they had a flat or broke a chain. So the community, if you haven't experienced, you need to come to try it out.
I was just reflecting on like I think also the the scene in Miami is also an extreme.
True.
If I can say, like if you were ever to be shamed about status or about bikes or equipment or body or anything, like Miami is the mecca.
It is.
True.
Definitely is. It's beautiful in a sense. If that's the way Miami's spreading the love and getting more people on the bikes, more power to you. We got to use our strengths, right?
That's true. That's true.
So how did you, this is just personal curiosity, how you went from Miami to Switzerland, and where are your roots? I see Cuban, Puerto Rican.
Yeah. Yeah, so my mother is from Cuba, born and raised, and went to Puerto Rico like all Cubans at a certain stage. Went to high school there, and then came to university. It was the first time she came to the United States in university. Yeah, so like all Cubans, my whole family is in Miami.
Are they?
And that's where we were raised. I moved around a bit, so like I didn't go to high school in Miami. But came back and went to law school in Miami. And yeah, so I have a love-hate relationship with the city. I think I love, especially like the Cuban heritage. It makes me feel at home. But the consumerist culture there made me flee the United States, if I'm
Mhm.
honest. I thought I couldn't pursue the line of work that I wanted to pursue and live in Miami because I
Mhm.
would not be able to withstand the pressure of my peers who were driving fancy cars and buying fancy houses. And the line of work that I was pursuing was not going to result in fancy cars or fancy houses. So
Mhm.
yeah, and I didn't think I was strong enough to withstand the pressure, so I left. Which I'm not necessarily proud of, but that's the story. It's really funny because when I was growing up, there was a sort of shame attached to it, in the sense that like yeah, as any first generation immigrant knows, like you try to make your kids kind of like gel with the mainstream and like try
Mhm.
and beat the accents out of them and like
Fit fit in.
and
Yeah.
but now it's like for me in particular, and then with my kids also, I'm trying to kind of engender this a sense of identity with them. And it's a huge source of pride, and it is what I love most about going home. You know, like sitting around the domino table with all the old Cubans
Oh,
and talking shit. So yeah, it's it's still for me. It's really a mixed cup. A lot of nostalgia, a lot of beautiful memories,
Yeah.
but it's a place I like to visit and not to live
Live.
anymore.
Yeah. Do you flex the Spanish muscle at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, increasingly, I probably have like an eighth grader's Spanish. It's something that I'm really curious about now. Like, it's like a new intellectual passion of mine. Even though I'm living in a francophone country,
Yeah.
I've been really trying to kind of hone in on my Spanish so that I can go and do a big bike packing race or ride in Cuba that I'd like to do by the end of the year.
Oh, that'd be
Maybe
incredible.
bringing one of our guys with us too, like
Oh,
Ken
that would be
Correa.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just yeah, showing him my mother's country.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
amazing. Well, I think it's late there for you. I don't want to. We won't want to keep you too much longer. Really, really, really appreciate you sharing. Your time with us, especially now that you're in Kenya, getting ready for the Safari Rebel series.
I actually would love to extend an invite to some of the riders. I would love to have them on the show and speak with them about training, how this has influenced their life, how much this has meant to them, what this changes, what they see affecting.
That's a wonderful reflex and instinct, Debbie, and yeah, we can definitely set that up. I can think of a couple of people, so yeah, we can definitely organize that.
I would love
Awesome.
that.
Let us
Thank
know.
you. This has been wonderful, really. It's really cool to
No,
talk
and
to
thank
you.
you, and thank both of you for thinking of us and wanting to help us to kind of get our message out there. It really means a lot to us, and yeah, and it was a fun conversation. Yeah, hoping to see you guys out there, either
Definitely
in
want to try to
Miami
get
or
out there.
yeah, or in some gravel event in the future.
Yeah, for
Sounds
sure.
great.
100%. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Really appreciate you.
No problem.
Cheers.
Bye.
Ciao.
That's all for today's episode. We want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. Your support means everything to us. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends. Feel free to share your thoughts and feedback. We love hearing from you.